Hey everyone, TB Shores here. It is May the 9th, 2015. Here's where we are. And in 2 weeks, we will be at Pentecost. Now, I want to back up a couple of days and take you to the 7th. Something happened that day. The Lord showed me something that day that I wanted to share with you because I found it to be very encouraging. But I had been, I had been out running errands on Thursday, the 7th of May. And I was getting close to home. I was almost home. And I looked down at my mileage gauge, and this is what I saw. And of course, the numbers caught my attention because 7, we know, is God's number of completion. So here it happened on the 7th, and I see these numbers. And so it caught my attention. So I started thinking, well, wonder if it's going to click over because I was almost home. I was on my street. And I thought, I wonder if it's going to click over to be all 7s by the time that I get home. And I want you to know the very instant that I pulled into my driveway, this is what I saw. 7777 on the 7th. And I was like, wow. I mean, it blew my mind. I was like, that has to be God. So when I turned my motor off, took my key out, everything electronic in my car went dark except this. These 7s, which represent God's number of completion, all remained illuminated in neon green. I don't think that's a coincidence because everything else in my car went black, went dark. The only thing that you could see was these 7s. Okay. Later, I was talking to a friend on the phone, and I found myself saying this. I was explaining this to him, and I found myself saying this about these 7s right here. That when I turned off the ignition and took my key out, everything went dark, and the only thing you could see was these 4 7s. And immediately, I realized what had just come out of my mouth. And it was like I was speaking in reference to the darkness that's coming. Everything will be dark, but the only thing that will be seen is the bride as she has been changed, been illuminated, and it will be her time to shine. That is when she comes to bring in the wheat harvest. But she's changed first. She's illuminated, transformed. And I feel like that's what God was showing me. He was showing me about the darkness, about the bride's illumination. And he was showing me his number of completion. And I felt like he was saying, because this number of completion, the series of numbers came when I arrived home, that it was about, we're about to go home. God's about to complete his work. We're about to go home. We're about to be changed. And then we will come back and do the work he has for us. Well, the next day I was in the bathroom combing my hair, and I wasn't thinking about anything. And this is what came to me. Arrived home at the last 7. The last 7. And I'm thinking, the last 7? That made me think of the counting of the Omer. And what I want to show you about that is that would be this right here. It begins on the 17th and runs through Pentecost. That's the last 7 of the 7 7s. Okay. The 17th is significant because I hit the 7. The 7 rolled over. The beginning of the next 7 came. It wasn't like it came on the way home or after I left home the next time. It came the instant that I arrived home. The last 7 hit. Okay, when the last 7 hits is here. It begins here. The beginning of the 7, the last 7. Just as I saw the last 7, it clicked over and began the last mile before or the instant that I arrived home. And see, the bride would have already have been transformed because this number 17 is about resurrection. Okay? And of course, we all know how that applies to the bride. I'm not going to get into that. I'm trying to keep this brief. But another thing I found interesting is as we count the Omer from first Passover of last month, we see that on the 17th, in the evening, going by Hebrew count, in the evening of the 17th begins the 44th day of the Omer. And we know that the number 44 represents judgment. Okay, one thing I want to point out here is when the bride comes back to begin her harvesting of souls, it's going to be that, how would you say, it's a time of judgment, so to speak, because God is going to be making everyone aware so that he is placing them on the balances, on his balances. That's what this is all about, the judgment that's coming. And this time when the bride comes to do her work is about putting everybody in awareness to where everyone has the same understanding of who God is and where they stand with God. And it's about God putting them on that balance of justice. And the weighing and the judgment begins. And I find it very interesting that the 44th Omer begins here. Something else that I noticed is as we play out here this last 7 of the 7 sevens of the counting of the Omer, we go through the week and we get to Pentecost. And where are we right now? This is today, which is 2 weeks from Pentecost. Okay, that takes me back to something that the Lord showed me back on 4/4. See, we got 4/4 again. April the 4th, 2013, where the Lord told me Jesus and his disciples have 2 weeks, which can mean both. It can mean we have two as in actual 2 weeks, and it can mean that we have 2 Pentecost or Till Pentecost. And both of these actually have the dual meaning of both of these together applies right here where we are, because it is 2 weeks till Pentecost. And if you want to go by the morrow of the Sabbath, because that's mentioned in scriptures, that would be starting tomorrow on Sunday, and it would go 1/2 to here. But of course, the 24th, the way it's counted on the Hebrew calendar, begins in the evening here, and this is Pentecost. So we are 2 weeks, a 2-week count away from Pentecost, and we see that application with this number. And Jesus and his disciples have till Pentecost. And if we look at this as being completing what the Lord told me we have until Pentecost, then we see this last 7 playing out and giving us till Pentecost. I hope this is making sense to y'all. I've tried to explain it the best that I can. But I do believe the Lord is saying something with this right here. And it's about arriving home at the last 7. Because I arrived home when the last 7 started. And I believe that's about the changing of the bride. Now, I'm not saying with any certainty, this is the day that the change takes place and yah. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I find it very interesting that this is what the Lord has shown me. I think that this right here is a very significant date. And I think what the Lord told me back then holds significance. All I can say is, I know the Lord showed me the time of Passover was the time for the bride. We are in second Passover. He has showed me the significance of the second Passover. If you've been watching my videos, you understand what all God's been pointing out concerning second Passover and the shaking of the idols and how that takes us to the United States. And he's leading me through some things me and Lou are working on that I have to lay it out in order or it's not going to make sense. But basically, all these things the Lord is showing me it's going to take us back to second Passover and understandings within. So take this, go to the Lord with it for discernment. I wanted to share it because I found it was very encouraging to me. I do think it means something. Now, exactly what? That's for the Lord to decide. I can only tell you what I feel I have been led to understand, and then you seek the Lord and discern from there. I love y'all. Bye-bye.